The dog was whining in despair, howling with all his might, as if he were trying to bring back to life someone buried under that earth. His eyes were fixed on that grave, while the icy wind whipped his rain-soaked body. What kept him tied to that desolate place, so much so that he did not want to abandon it, even for a moment? Before we delve into this story, full of emotions and twists, be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on the next exciting stories we have in store for you. But now, let's take a step back and find out what led up to this pivotal moment. Once upon a time, a couple was trying to survive the hardships of life. He was called Olmo, a man who once dreamed big, with a heart full of hope. She was Neves, a woman of character, but consumed by constant clashes. Their home, once full of laughter and dreams, had turned into a battlefield. Every day was a war. Harsh words, silences that hurt more than anything, slammed doors. Arguments about how to pay the bills, how to get by, became their only topic. The love that had once united them seemed like a distant, almost faded memory. Olmo looked at Neves and no longer saw the woman he had fallen in love with, but only his tiredness, his frustration. In the end, without any more hope or strength, they decided to separate. Olmo was left alone, immersed in a solitude that devoured him from the inside. After the divorce, Olmo's life began to slide into the abyss. Day after day, he sank deeper into the darkness of depression. Alcohol became his only comfort, his only refuge during the long, cold nights. Every drink was an attempt to escape the pain, to forget the loneliness that surrounded him like an invisible cage. But the more he drank, the more that void inside him grew, sucking up every shred of happiness. One evening, during a violent storm, when the rain seemed to want to break the windows and the wind howled with the force of 1,000 voices, a different sound tore through the air, a howl, sharp and insistent. It was a call that seemed to come from another dimension, a cry for help that no one could ignore. Olmo, immersed in his thoughts clouded by alcohol, jumped. Something, a primal instinct perhaps, pushed him to get up. Staggering, he headed toward the back door. It was then that he saw it. A dog, its fur soaked with rain, stood still under the lightning. Its eyes seemed to pierce the darkness, staring at Olmo with a depth he had never seen before. It was as if the animal was trying to tell him something urgent. Olmo, confused, decided to follow it. He went out into the rain, the cold penetrating his bones, but he kept walking, driven by an energy he couldn't explain. The dog ran ahead, leading him away from the house. And then it happened. A deafening roar broke through the roar of the storm. A giant tree, uprooted by the strong wind, fell with a devastating thud right where Olmo had stood only moments before. The man's heart stopped for a moment, reality hitting him like a punch in the stomach. He looked at the animal with wide eyes. That dog, that simple dog, had just saved his life. From that moment on, Olmo decided to keep that unusual savior with him. He called him Thor, and between them a bond was born that no one could have predicted. Thor became more than a companion. He was his anchor, his guiding spirit. Every day spent with him, every walk under the sun or the rain, helped Olmo rediscover the beauty of a world he had stopped seeing. Every morning, the man woke up with a reason to live, and little by little, the weight of alcohol and depression began to fade. One day, during one of those long walks, Olmo met Matilda. Their eyes met for a moment, and in that moment, they both felt something. Matilda, a woman with a difficult history behind her, was a single mother who had fought with all her might to raise her daughter, Ada. Between them, a deep understanding was immediately established, a connection that only those who have known pain can understand. Time passed, and together with Thor, Ada and Matilda, Olmo finally found a new reason to smile. Their house filled with joy, laughter, shared moments that seemed to give meaning to the word family. However, as often happens, the quiet is short-lived when the past decides to resurface. One particularly hot morning, Olmo decided to leave Thor at home while he went out for his usual run. As soon as he walked away, however, Thor began to whine with an unusual insistence. It was as if he wanted to warn him of something. Olmo felt a shiver run down his spine, an alarm signal, but he decided to ignore it, convinced that it was just a change of routine that was disturbing his faithful friend. The hours passed, and Matilda began to feel a sense of anxiety growing inside her. Olmo's absence was becoming too long, and Thor's behavior only increased her sense of uneasiness. Suddenly, the dog darted out of the door with overwhelming energy, running as if he were following an invisible trail. Matilda and Ada, frightened, decided to follow him, and soon found themselves in front of an old cemetery. If you're enjoying the video so far, please like and subscribe so you don't miss out on more compelling stories like this one. Matilda's heart beat faster and faster as Thor continued to run, heading towards a specific grave. The dog barked with such desperation that it seemed to want to break the silence of the dead. The earth was loose, as if someone had recently dug. Matilda, her heart in her throat, called the police. The officers arrived, and despite their initial skepticism, they decided to dig. With each shovelful, the air became thicker, and the silence became almost deafening. When finally, "There's someone in there," one of the policemen shouted. The chest was opened urgently, and before the astonished eyes of all, the face of Olmo appeared. He was pale, disfigured, but alive. He was breathing with difficulty, and a wound on his head indicated a desperate struggle. Matilda screamed, seeking help with tears streaming down her face. Thor was still barking as if his heart could not be stilled. Rushed to the hospital, Olmo awoke after days of unconsciousness. But the mystery didn't stop there. With the help of the police, he was able to describe the face of the man who had hit him. When Matilda saw that face, she turned pale. It was her ex-husband, Ada's father, a man she had left years before to save herself from a life of abuse. Thor had understood everything. He had sensed the danger when no one else had seen it coming. The dog was not just a companion, he was a guardian angel. And while justice took its course, everyone knew that without him, that story would have had a different ending. And you, what would you do if your past came back to threaten your happiness? Would you have the courage to face it?